Look, thank you for taking part in this short Q&A. We formed a professional relationship probably 2 years ago now. We were very fortunate that you approached us, and at that time, the organisation you were working with were challenging themselves to reach a net zero target, and you identified that laundry is one of those areas that is a pretty ugly, dirty little space, and it was very timely. Obviously, now CQC are bringing out standards, and the latest is Quality Statement 34, which is actually looking to engage care operations with this very challenge. So I feel like you're a very well qualified person to speak to the industry really about what you learn along the journey. So it seems like a logical place for us to start is really to just simplify it. What was the background to your project? Where did it all start in your world?
Well, hi, Pete. Yeah, great question. So firstly, there was an ambition set by the chief exec saying that we wanted to reach net zero across the business. And the business at that time was around about 130 services throughout the UK. So quite a tough challenge, really. And that was across things like kitchens, laundries, heating, hot water, you name it. So the whole business was to aim for net zero. And that was our starting point. And quite quickly, we kind of worked out that laundries were going to be quite difficult. Where you can change things like kitchens quite easily, I think laundries became quite difficult. Now, the starting point for this was firstly to review the electricity that we were using, and actually we're using green electric anyway. So if you think about washing machines, we were drawing on green electricity. So there's very little there to be had. You then turn your attention to the tumble dryers and see that the vast majority of them, when we surveyed them, were heated with used gas. So there was an opportunity to move. And then the thinking went to heat pumps. And initially that sounded like a really great idea. Heat pumps have had a good press, I think, and it's increasing. But when you looked at it commercially, the downside to them was very much around the length of time it took. And of course, if you look at things in isolation, perhaps you might be led down one path. But if you don't look at the whole piece, you don't look at it holistically, you then forget about your staffing model, and suddenly you could end up quite easily increasing your costs in laundry. And of course, it's okay having a net zero ambition, but that's not at the cost to everything. So heat pumps, again, quite quickly ended up not being the solution. And for a while, I'll be really honest, I think laundries ended up on the too difficult pile. I think there was easier things to go for. I think there was more low-hanging fruit, if you like, and laundries were just something that we just were going to put off. We couldn't really get our heads around it. And that's because we were doing it in isolation. We were thinking about one thing and not thinking about the whole kind of laundry piece, from the collection of dirty laundry throughout the care homes and care villages, all the way through to bringing them to the laundry, processing them, and even drying and ironing them, and then returning them back to the customer. And when we started to think about that, we then started to think, actually, we need to find a partner that could help us to think about this as a whole process rather than just thinking about one thing. And that's when we got in touch with your good selves at WASHCO and had, I think, a very open, honest and frank conversation about that, the process, and very quickly worked out that by challenging our thinking in terms of things like, let's say, the WASH programme, not ignoring washing machines, looking at drums that weigh the washing, making sure that you've got, 100% fill or as near as you can in terms of the washer, rather than having probably 75 to 80. Doing things like assessing the electrical supply within our care homes and villages to see whether actually we could fulfill this, whether we had enough juice in every facility to actually facilitate this, was another massive piece of work. looking at the water that we were drawing on the machines and seeing if we could reduce that. Looking at time, could we take 5 minutes out of the wash program? Could we make those more efficient? Because it's no good having an efficient washing system when half the clothes come out the end and they're still stained and they've got to go back through the system again. So it was looking at all those pieces and saying, okay, actually, if we line all these up, could we actually end up not only getting to net zero, but also doing this in a cost-effective way over a period of time. And I think we looked at essentially sort of between 3 and 5 years, and ended up actually by running the ROI over 5 years, we could end up actually with a capital investment, a change in the way we did things, and actually end up with a net zero laundry. And actually, it was an affordable change as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very interesting journey we went on, really. And you've touched upon a few things there that I'm very familiar with, obviously. And I don't want this to be a purely self-promotional piece, because I want this to be of value to someone who's in your position as you were then and may still find themselves in this position tomorrow, especially when we consider that there was a scale to your opportunity, and that in itself did breed some advantages. But equally, this could be filtered down to a singular care home that's trying to focus on their budgets, and obviously financially, this is. I mean, it's never been harder, I suspect, in care to operate effectively. So it's quite interesting. We can draw some parallels. There were some cost-effective benefits as much as there were the opportunities to make the wholesale change. So you've been on that long journey, and you saw the fruits of your labours as well. Looking back at that now, and then the project you underwent, was there a significant sea change? Was there one thing that if you could speak to yourself 2 years ago, you'd say, hey, Tim, put a bit more of your attention on that early, because you'll end up just dragging yourself over hot coals, and that's the North Star. Was there anything in particular that stood out in your memory when we explored the changes that could be possible?
Good question, Pete. I think first thing is the electrical supply. If you've got to get rid of your gas, you've got to go and have a look. In 130 sites, we found some sites that we had to walk away and say that these are not going to happen. You'd end up with a substation. You could end up with a bill of £250,000 or £500,000 to put enough electricity into those sites. So be real, be realistic of what you can achieve. You may or may not be able to do it. So I would personally have that assessment done quite early on, and ensure that you've got enough electricity. And we were also doing the kitchens at the same time, so moving a lot of gas out. So there's a big pull on a lot of those businesses. So I think you've got to be realistic with your business case and say, look, okay, can we do this? Second thing is you have to look at, I'd say you have to have a partner. And yeah, I know this sounds like a sort of a sales pitch for WASHCO, but actually we were with, and I'm not going to name names, but we didn't just speak to your good selves. We spoke to all the leading providers in the industry, all the people that we've known, and for various different reasons, they weren't the partner we wanted to go with. I think the intelligence and monitoring of the washing machines is vitally important. And I think there's an element to people you think, well, data, do you need the data? You definitely need the data. You have to get the data. This is fine. This is marginal gains. It's a term that's been used since, I think, probably the Olympics. There isn't just a way that you just walk in and say, okay, we'll just do this and that's it, you're going to achieve it. It is a little bit of this. It's filling the machines correctly. It's about water. It's about getting the chemistry right in the washing machines. We even, and you might not recall this, or you may recall this, we even talked about, was there a way that we could change the dryers, the ironing machines, so we didn't need to either dry at all or we could dry a lot less, and use the iron as a drying, a method for drying. I think we explored even things like that, which for us didn't work because we have fitted sheets. If you're in a flat sheet business, I think there's a potential to look at, really thinking differently. And that's why I think WASHCO was great, because we got the opportunity to sit back and say, what is it you're trying to achieve, and how can you help? So back to your question, long answer. You've got to find a partner in the industry. You can't do this on your own. You've got to find a partner.
It's quite interesting. There's some big takeaways, and yeah, you jogged my memory because it has been quite a while since we started some of those conversations. I think a big takeaway, if I was in the care sector and I was operating at home, is net zero is still and will remain a very challenging target in the space of commercial laundries. And what you leaned into there was something that I'm quite proud of, is actually we're trying to recognise where we can impact your businesses as well. And you related to the fact we have that connected technology. We see things remotely. We don't always have to be on site. And obviously that's where we become your scope 3 as part of the net zero targeting. So that is something that we offered, and obviously something we're proud of, is we were the first to launch actually a connected range of machines. So in essence, what we brought to the project then, Tim, is we tackled your scope 1s by approaching the technology in the actual laundry space, which was quite interesting because, as you said earlier, and I think it's a common place that people arrive at, we need to change the technology, and the obvious one is a heat pump. And I'm glad that you recognised it and gave us the opportunity, by the way, to share our feelings on the technology, because it's multiple points of pain for the user, for your processes, for the care owner, and actually from a provider, it's quite a challenging technology to keep happy. They're very service heavy, and then obviously we end up failing you, and that again comes into this holistic package. We could have probably solved your complete challenge with heat pump dryers across the entire estate, and none of us, I think, would have felt the benefit over time. I think, and unfortunately, I know you already had experience. So the recognition of all of the scopes. Do you have any comment that you'd like to pass about that technology, and what you feel as an operator, connected technologies should be delivering for care and the care environment and the laundry process? And any thoughts on that?
Well, I think the biggest challenge that any care provider has is what happens when. If you have a failed laundry, there's very little you can do about it. You can't outsource residents' personal clothing going out, so you'll never see them again. I mean, it's difficult enough to get laundry back to the right resident in a care setting. So leaving the building is not going to happen. Going with your flat linen, your towels and bed linen, okay, that could happen, but again, that's very challenging. And of course, there's more increasingly residence dependencies increasing. So and that can affect the laundry. So back to the question, having a proactive partner in laundry, I think is paramount. I mean, it's not going to stop things from breaking and failing, but if there's a team of people at your offices who are monitoring machinery and can see faults that are going to happen, or can see things like, I think one of the things in the pilot, if I remember rightly, we had some of our teams were opening the doors of the tumble dryers frequently, which then allows I'm no technician, but allows all the hot air to come out. The programs have to restart. It's not an efficient way to dry. It's a bit like trying to bake a souffle and keep opening the door. It's not going to happen. So it's things like that, and then the team go back out and train the staff. Once people understand why you shouldn't be doing that kind of thing, then we move on. So prior to the technology, you're kind of operating in a blind. You really don't know what's going on. You don't know what's happening. You might be seeing a lot of overtime go through your laundry, but you probably wouldn't know why. once you get that technology, you can see, how that laundry is operating and is it efficient? And then you scale that over 130 sites and probably 300 dryers and 300 washing machines. That all then starts to actually have a really positive effect. So again, it's marginal gains. Somebody just keeps opening the door, closing the door, opening the door, closing the door. If 130 sites are doing the same thing, and that bad practice is in your business, you need somebody like your good selves who can say, look, we need to do something about this. So I think it was probably a nice to have a few years ago. I think now it's a necessity, absolute necessity.
Yeah, it's a fascinating observation to hear that coming back at me from the other side of the track, because it's something that we spotted, I think about 7 or 8 years ago, and I think it's what excites me. It's just a new paradigm where all of a sudden you are in your laundry, and every stakeholder who's got a relationship with that laundry on a day-to-day can have a true visual and a true understanding of what's happening, which that's not always been the case. It's almost been the reserve of the people operating in the laundry, and that's a step away from the home management, and then obviously the overarching business leaders, etc., don't get it. So yeah, a really, really interesting observation, and I think bit of selfish promotion, but I think that's the critical piece here is the story that we built with you, which you very kindly allowed us to explore. It had that kind of we hung everything off the target of net zero, which was a heavy target, and it was an impressive target to sit and observe actually that an organisation of the size that you were operating in had that on their global agenda. So to then be able to sort of put a narrative on that and actually explore what creates that outcome beyond the box, because the box really is becoming, as you kind of alluded to there, the story is now it's the necessity of being able to understand more about the process. It's the focus has shifted away from the box. We all know a washing machine will wash and a dryer will dry, but now that we're all coming under a pressure for sustainability, and rightly so, obviously, we're not going to turn our back on it. It's quite interesting now that to be able to actually corroborate the story with data and facts is going to lead to that change, and probably one of the biggest shifts in the care space, certainly in the laundry. When I've been in this space for 25 years, a little bit less in your tenure, I'm pleased to say, but it's a big shift, I think, in intention. So, okay, Tim. So we've spoken about some of the technicality of delivering such a project and some of the barriers that you beat down, quite frankly, and you encountered along the way. I think one of the biggest concerns that many would have, and quite rightly so, is sustainability at the moment does feel like there are barriers, and some of those are financial. And obviously, I touched upon it a little earlier. Financials in the care sector are under pressure, probably like they've never been before. And some regulations encroach upon that ability to operate in a financial formula that works. But I'd like to explore how we broke down the barrier for you and your organisation to allow such a big project to be undertaken. The historical route to acquiring new assets was almost piecemeal. We have a failure, we get a replacement, and the observation of the benefits was, ring fenced to that one box. Now, we've already explored the fact that we looked at this holistically, and we said, well, where does the laundry process start? And if we recap on that, the actual process that we observed and we tried to tackle all the way through, you were heavily focused on your energy costs. So you knew what you were doing for your scope 2s, your procurement of your energy, and you wanted to shift away from gas. Operationally, just to recap, we focused on saving time and logistics in the actual operation. And they were small gains. All of it was small gains, but calculable gains. So we talked about time. And it was quite interesting. I think you had an opinion on time, and it wasn't to be a financial benefit. Am I right?
Yes. Of course, you trying to monetize time is very difficult. You're not going to start chipping away at people's hours, really. So finding a saving of, say, 30 minutes in a laundry is very difficult to actually take that money away and out. I think the trick was, and to begin with, we weren't thinking like this. We were thinking about, as you rightly said, capital, buying equipment, and doing the analysis of, say, running a gas tumble dryer versus running an electric one. And that simply doesn't work. If you look at the numbers, electricity is what, 3 times the price, depending on where we are. So electricity and gas prices are around about a third more expensive to run that. So like for like, it's not a very long conversation because you just say, well, this just doesn't stack up. Well, it doesn't. You're absolutely right, if that's all you're looking at. But we go back to what we talked about before and say, do this holistically, put everything into the pot, the whole laundry journey from start to finish. Then it does start to make some sense. And that's the conversation. I think we were at it for hours, Pete. We were talking kind of open shop. We came to your boardroom and sat down and said, look, how's this? What does this look like? So people don't take on board water costs. Why not? That's a utility and it costs money. The less water you use, you can make a saving. Is it significant? Well, it is actually, but people don't always put that into the calculation. So water. Time, can you do something better with the time? Well, do people stand in laundries watching the machine going round and round? No, they don't. So can you use those people, that time, that resource within your business? Perhaps you can. Perhaps you can do other things. You might repair the laundry, you might do more finishing, but you might be doing curtains, you might be doing all sorts of things, but you can definitely use that. Can you reduce your chemical costs? Yes, you can. If you're weighing the laundry with the washing machine and you're only calling in X amount of water and X amount of chemical, then yes. And those savings start to significantly add up because each washing machine is doing what, 10 loads a day? 2 machines or 3 machines, that's 20 loads or even 30 loads a day. That's a lot of loads. That's a lot of chemical, a lot of water. And then, are the machines actually efficient? So are you doing rewashing? And if you are doing rewashing, then do you know what that looks like? Then that might be the fact of sitting in a laundry, watching the processes, making sure people are choosing the correct wash programs, not just going for the quickest one, and making sure that the chemistry is correct. So you have very few, if any, rewashes. And again, that drives out a lot of cost. You start to put all those into the equation, and you end up then actually with something that over 5 years, and we also, Pete, if you recall, we talked about, could we look at a warranty period that for those machines so we don't have any OPEX spend? We agreed on the 5 years with the intelligence system as well and new equipment. And therefore you say, okay, so I've got a capital cost of this. I've got no OPEX or very little OPEX, only sort of, slight OPEX spend. But you've got reductions in water, you've got reductions in chemical, you've got no OPEX spend, you've got an efficient team, you've got less washing because you've got no rewashing, and then you put that into your calculator, and we worked out it was a no-brainer. By the end of the 5-year period, over that period of time, no-brainer. That's why we bought into the system. So again, as always with me, a long answer, but a great question. And financially, it stacks up. But you've got to look at it in the round. You've got to put everything into the calculation.
Yeah, no. Of course, I'm going to agree, but I do totally agree. It is quite a complex offering, laundry, and it's all that opportunity that businesses are missing, I think, to actually be quite observant of the entire ecosystem around the box. And it's long been my held belief that no one really wants to buy a big ugly washing machine for £5,000 or £10,000. That, I mean, you talk about cars depreciating when they come off the forecourt. That laundry, that nice washing machine, when it gets off the back of our lorry, there's basically no second-hand value in that asset. It is literally, if you don't use it and it doesn't have a good long life, then it's not a very desirable purchase. And it's part of our sustainability drive as well. So we want to engage our customers like yourself. We want to explore the opportunity of the long-term relationship. And quite often, to be fair, that does fall into a kind of a rental type relationship because it eliminates all that upfront cost. You were very fortunate in your organisation. You had a little bit of CapEx opportunity presented to you, but we still tabled that solution, obviously, to combine all of the benefits in that rolled up sort of solution that then, it's a bit like when you do a mortgage at home, isn't it? You like the idea of fixing sometimes in a volatile economy for the longest period of time. And we achieved that with you guys, and you were very gracious in letting us explore that. And I think that's something that's quite a nice opportunity for businesses that are likely to be facing this considerable challenge. And I think that it feels like the pressure to become more sustainable is going to increase through regulations as they come on board, and obviously through industry norms. And I think now, when customers invest, I think the investment should be in kind of that long-term objectivity. What sort of care am I getting? How efficient is this going to be? And I'd like customers in our future to be able to consider not replacing an asset at its 10th year anniversary. Looking at the opportunities that we are trying to work with manufacturers to bring to market now, where they will allow us through their supply chain to give longer life expectancy to assets in the field. Yeah. So it's all tying into a truly sustainable model for a pretty unsustainable part of any care home. Now, I seem to recall, Tim, I want to quote you, but I'd also like you to correct me if I'm wrong, or even elaborate if I'm right. But I'm sure I recall you saying that you felt that laundry in particular is the truly difficult space to find massive energy savings. You felt, if I'm right, your kitchen, switching them from gas to electricity, you had control because you gained an on and an off function that was never there potentially with gas.
Yeah, exactly that. When you look at kitchens, it is quite simple. When you walk into a kitchen, especially this time of year, you walk in and the gas cookers are on, the oven's on, get it up to temperature. That's kind of the mentality. Nothing wrong with that. Probably, you know, I'm in my 50s, and when I was at catering college, that's what you did. But very few kitchens you'd ever walk in and see any heating. So how do you keep a room in, you know, when it's 3 or 4 degrees outside? How do you get it warm? Well, you put the cooker on. So you've got gas burning away all day long. Rarely would you switch it off. Versus moving to electricity, where it's induction, so that as soon as the pan hits, then it heats up, and as soon as you take it off, it stops. So that actually is a very simple calculation, because you can you're stopping using the gas. In a laundry, that's not the case, because the dryer is going to be running, you know, doing 10 loads a day, whether it's powered by electricity or powered by gas. It's irrelevant. It's still going to run for the same amount of time. And as electric is currently, you know, 3 times the price of gas, then actually, you know, by the time you've had a cup of tea and thought about it, you probably run away. But why are people buying electric cars? Because they cost about £100,000 each. They're a lot more expensive than a traditional car. But the running costs and the servicing costs and all the other costs that is attributed to the electric car, the Tesla or whatever it is, actually, when you do the ROI and put it over a 5-year period, they're actually really quite cost effective. And it's exactly the same conversation for laundries. That, you know, if you look at it in just the asset versus the asset, it just doesn't stack up. But you got to think differently, and I think people do think differently about things nowadays. And you go back to, I think, what you said at the start, Pete, was that CQC, whilst that regulation has always kind of been there, it's never really been pushed. It's never really been a focus, and never really been audited. As that becomes an issue now for people to say, well, look, hang on a minute, what are you doing? Well, there's the low-hanging fruit, which is, you know, make sure your waste streams are in order. Excuse me. The kitchen, I think, is a simple one to do. There are plenty of partners out there who can help with kitchens. You get to laundry, because that's a massive energy area that uses a lot of energy. And that's something that people should face into, because it's doable. Whereas I think originally people thought it wasn't, but actually it is, and we've proved it. So, you know, So my advice to anybody watching this or listening to this and thinking, actually, that's really interesting. The bit to do actually is if you don't share your problems with people, you'll rarely find a solution. There's nothing in just having a Teams call or a coffee and saying, look, this is my ambition. I want to be net zero, want to change the laundry, don't have a lot of capex. How do we do this? And if you come out of that meeting and say, okay, that's not for us, then at least you can evidence that back to CQC and say that you've reviewed it, you've looked at it. And at the moment, that doesn't stack up for you, but you're going to do other things. But actually, I think you'd be surprised and think with somebody like WASHCO, who could give you a business case, I guess, over 5, 7, 10 years, and it might make it affordable. So what's wrong in just having a coffee and discussing it? Why wouldn't you do that? I think that's what I'd be doing. So that'd be my advice.
Well, again, look, I'm the big scary salesman, aren't I? And that's always that fear. But I've tried to break that barrier down and actually talk of business to business, because I think there's a better logic then to say, look, you've got a problem. We can solve it. We'll carry some risk. We know that. The relationship, we want that. We want a long-term relationship. We view you as our investors. If you've signed up to be with us for a long period of time, we've got to take care of you as our investors, because you're the people you're our lifeblood. So yeah, no, it's really, it's quite refreshing, but we're starting to see actually already there is a shift in the market. I think because sustainability it's no longer a buzzword, it's a must-have, really, isn't it? Because we've got a lot of work to do, I think, in this sector and in industry as a whole to clean up our act where we have the opportunity to do so. So
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Looking to the future of care and the environment itself and laundry, was there anything that you were sort of seeing in the future of all of the services that you were taking care of? Was there anything that you saw on the sustainable horizon that was exciting, that is technology that may benefit laundry or may benefit care, maybe in the generation of power, or anything exciting that could be of interest? You were so innovative. That's all I remember. Very innovative in your approach. Open eyes.
We looked during the pandemic at control of infection, as everybody did, and felt that the laundry ends up being kind of the end game. That's where everything ends up. And if it comes out of the laundry and it's not disinfected to the correct level, you've not got the right log reduction, then you've got a problem. So I think in terms of the whole IPC, infection prevention control piece, I think that's vital. And I think more work should be done on that in terms of perhaps the chemicals that are used. People look at ozone technology. Okay, I'm a reasonable fan of it, but not washing in cold water. So there's a chemistry piece. There's setting stains and trying to get them out. I think there's a whole piece about what's actually happening within the washing machine. Excuse me. And I think there should be more work done on that. I think the ironing process, because of course to drive out the moisture, which essentially is the challenge. You make everything wet, then you've got to get it dry again. And there's two sides to this. There's tumble dry, but then you're drying again with the ironer. I've always thought there's an opportunity there to perhaps somehow look at how we iron and whether that could be two-stage rather than just getting rid of creases. Actually, is that adding any value? Is that drying as well as ironing? Are we doing the two things? There was an issue that one of your colleagues, Amanda, brought up at the time, which was sorting of washing and getting the correct textiles in each of the washes. And that has a massive effect on drying, having the wrong products in the dryers. And your dryers have sensors which tell you when things are dry. But if you've got cotton and synthetics in the same drum, I think that's really interesting. And can have a massive effect on how long your laundry's running for and how long that tumble dryer's running for. One of the things I really liked was, I think, when your team essentially sat on a buffet in the laundry, and it's quite labour intensive, but actually seeing how people launder, who's training people to run a laundry. Not many people. What tends to happen is that people train people to use the machines. That's not the same as training people to do laundry. So, you know, I think an opportunity is, and I don't know how this is done, but, bringing laundry people out of the laundry and actually training them and certificating them and all that kind of good stuff. I think that's vital. But there's nothing, is there? There is nothing like getting into a fresh bed yourself. Nothing like that when you go to bed and it's a fresh bed. Even more so when it's been on the line and it's dried. One of the best, nicest feelings ever. And I think residents love getting their clothes back from the laundry. They've been repaired. There's a button on there. We shouldn't forget the effect it has on the customer, on the resident. That to me is paramount. And the laundry staff themselves, they work very, very hard. In the summer, it's a very hot environment, and not always the most pleasant place to work. So I think investing in laundries is a must. We looked at outsourcing, seriously looked at outsourcing. I couldn't make it work. I couldn't make the financial stack up. I couldn't get the logistics to work. I didn't think it was sustainable. I couldn't get that to work at all. So that's why, again, we invested in in-house laundries, and yeah. So I don't know whether there's anything sort of very innovative on its way. I think that the most innovative thing is the technology of actually monitoring the laundry, and I think anything that can stop the downtime when laundry equipment breaks, because that has a massive effect on the provision. So being more proactive than being responsive, I think, is really important. And care providers would probably say, actually, that's a good point. If we invested in this and the machines weren't down for X period of time or whatever, then good. That's a good thing for provision. So, yeah.
Yeah, it comes back to that same place we were earlier, where we've got all of this technology, and it's been around for quite a number of years now. It's connected knowledge base, and actually, we all need to use that to our advantage. Not just us as the supplier. We can see the advantage it gives us as a stakeholder for service and care, but as you said, giving you the facts, giving you the data, proof of concept as well. I mean, that's one of the things that we aim to do from the outset of the discussions with you, is go, right, we've got this data that says this will happen for you, and then we put some concepts out, we proved it, and quite happily proved that it was not only achieving what we said, it went a little bit further because you got a few extra percentage points of benefit. So yeah, it's a very exciting look forward, I think, for something that's quite a traditional. God, I've been in the industry for 25 years, so I shouldn't really say it, but it's not the most exciting end of technology. Normally, it's normally a big metal box and it's a workhorse, but this new technology, the connectivity, the focus on sustainability, is starting to show true benefits for the operators of care, and that's got to be a good thing, because that means the more viable the laundry is in operation, the more efficient, the more effective. I believe all of the stakeholders in care benefit in the same way that we do from the technology, which is the transition from people focusing on the doing and actually then separating themselves and taking care of people. So I think the more time and freedom we give back to carers and the people that function in these spaces and work in these laundries, the more chances are they'll turn it to people rather than process. So yeah, exciting times ahead. Really do. I really think it is exciting.
Yeah. So yeah, I agree.